Well, the reason why I requested that song is because this month, it's a brand new month. We're in February. Where did January go? My gosh, I can't believe that we're already in the second month of 2024. But the reason I asked for that song is because we, as I said, a new month, we have a new theme, and that new theme is visualization and visioning equals mental equivalence. So it's all about what we see. So my first question to you, because my talk title this morning is being a possibilitarian. So how do you see your life? Do you see it in possibilities? Do you see the glass half full? Do you see it always empty? How do you envision what is going on in your life? The wonderful thing about science of mind or unity or any of the metaphysical relationships we have with God is that it allows us to see our lives and our relationship through this wonderful lens of visioning, visualization, or a mental equivalent. Now, I had a member ask, well, what's the difference? And I said, well, that's true because it's all in the mind. And that's how we operate. Everything is up here. Everything is in our mind, what we see, what we experience. And in that, the first I'm going to attack is the visualization. And visualization is basically seeing or picturing in your own mind what something looks like. So, what does it look like? If you could draw something up right now, what would it look like in your life? What is the outcome? What is it that you see? Then the next thing would be visioning. Now, visioning is something that we do in Science of Mind a lot. And people will ask me, why do we do visioning? What's the purpose? You know, we get these weird images, like we'll get pink fluffy clouds, like we were doing visioning a few weeks ago, and which was really cool because we got smells of bread and pink fluffy clouds that look like cotton candy, and I mean I could go on and on, and people ask me, well, what does that have to do with what's going on in the world or my world? It has a lot. What we look at those things as is kind of like a dream interpretation. I mean, guess that's the way I can actually interpret it. And so we take all those images and we align them and we say, okay, what is the highest good, or what is the greater next to be? What is it that I need to know? And a few weeks ago I said, well, one of the things that's coming up is that there's a want of a place, that we're done being nomads, that we want a more permanent structure so that we can have fellowship. We can go back to having potlucks. We can go back to having, community things. And so there was several things that came up, like I smell bread. I taste cookies. There were different things that involved fellowship. So when we take those images and those feelings and we say, okay, that is what is moving forward. That is what we as a community want to know about our greater yet to be, our next place. However, as I said 2 weeks ago, it's not now, but it's coming. It's coming. It's all baby steps. And that's why visioning is so important. So when we vision in our life, we can do the same thing. What it's very easy to do is there's kind of the shortcut I'll give you version, is you sit somewhere very quietly and you ask if, when there's something in your life that's maybe a little wonky, or maybe you need to know because it's the greater unknown, you say, what is mine to know? And just allow yourself to be quiet, shut your eyes, and let Spirit speak to you. And now if you get some really weird images and say, what is that all about? It's okay. Because those images or whatever is coming forth, that is what is part of what is gathering together to give you the information to move forward or to know that always everything is okay. Always. So visioning is a huge part of the science of mind teaching. And what we learn from it is, I said, what our next greatest yet to be is. And we tend to, like with everything else in our lives, we analyze it. Don't analyze it. Don't beat it to death. Just let it be. Let it go. But keep a journal. And it's interesting because when you do a few visioning sessions, you'll start to see a story appear. You'll start to see things come together. It's really fast. It's actually very fascinating. So the next thing I want to cover is mental equivalence. Now this will be, these three things that I'm talking about today, right now, will be something that I'm expanding on the rest of the month. But I wanted to get real clear with what I am going to be talking about. So mental equivalence is basically a subjective idea of the desired experience. This is when the senses come into play. What does your body feel like having it? We must have a mental equivalent of the thing we desire to experience a demonstration or manifestation. Long ago in a galaxy very far, 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 far away, I wanted a sports car. Well, I love sports cars. Just let it be known. But back then, there was this little car called the MR2. And they had a version that was square. And then they came out with this rocket-looking body style. And I wanted that car. Even though my father told me, Rhonda, you never buy a first year with even if it's a new body style, because they got to get all the kinks out. Right. So I looked at this car and I looked at the pages and I just thought, oh, I really want this thing. So I went down to the Toyota dealer. And I was living in California at the time in Carlsbad, and I said, I want to see your MR2. And the gentleman, and I told the gentleman up front because I realized, it's a sales thing. And I said, I apologize for taking up your time, but I need to feel this car. And so he said, sure. So put me in the car. I sat there. He actually let me, we took it for a ride, so I was able to hear the, that kind of good stuff. And it was like, oh, yes. And of course it shifts. And it was just, it's really cool. And I lived in a beach town, so of course you can go down PCH, of course driving in your rearview mirror because you want to make sure the cops aren't behind you. But I sat in that car after we were done, and he goes, well, I'm leaving. And I said, that's fine. Can I sit in the car just for a little bit? And he goes, yes. So we parked it so that they could see from the sales floor. And I sat there. And I remembered how it sounded with the ignition and that of that engine. And I thought, yes, this is the car I want. This is it. This is my car. Well, back then, I had a Chevy Sprint. So going from that to that. And I thought, well, yes. So every time I got into my little Chevy Sprint that went ding, 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 when I, turned the ignition, I heard that in my mind. And I thought, okay, what color do I want? Black. Got to have black. Shiny black and black interior. And I could smell that new car smell. So I began to live and breathe and have its being in me. I knew that every time I got into that Chevy Sprint, even though I was opening a little door, I was actually sitting in my MR2. And this was the miracle, because I had no idea how I could ever afford the car. And so I had a very dear friend who I was very, very close to. And she was getting ready to transition. And she was a very wonderful and loving and giving person. And so she was doing things for her friends because she could. And it was something that she wanted everyone to know that they had maybe something from her. So one day we were having lunch together and I had taken her to the doctor and a few things. And she said, Rhonda, she said, what is it you want? I said, I just want to be happy. I said, I'm good. I'm really good. She goes, no, what physical, material thing do you want? And I laughed. I said, oh, it's this car that I want, blah, blah, blah. And I told her all about it. Next thing I know, 2 days later, I get a call from the Toyota dealership down in San Diego that says, we have a car here for you. We have an MR2 that's black with black interior. And I said, who? Who are you calling? And he said, well, you're Rhonda Tretsven, right? Like, yes. Well, Virginia, and I cannot remember her last name. Anyway, she has gifted you a car. So I have the keys for you whenever you decide to come down here. I was like, whoa, okay. So I went and got my car. And I drove it forever. I loved that little car. In fact, poor Charles, he hears me talk about it all the time. You know, and we're both car people, so we're both always talking about cars and different things like that. But that was, if you ever have a car in your life, that was the car for me. And so that's what I mean by mental equivalence, is that you see yourself in that situation. You see yourself in that car, that house, whatever it is. You see yourself living, breathing, and being in it. That's your mental equivalent. And trust me, it happens. That's just one of many stories that I will tell you over some time about manifestation and mental equivalence. So if you really, really know there's something in your life right now that you want, then know it is already done. It is already done in the mind of God, which is our mind. So in Proverbs 23:7, it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That's what we are. We think within our hearts, in our minds, and we create our life. As we think in our minds what it is that we desire, whatever that outlook is, we are setting a domino effect into motion. We're setting a law into motion because everything conspires to work for us, not against us. Even though I know there's some of you that probably think, oh no, it's always against me. No. Okay, how many times will I say this? God, energy, first cause, whatever you want to call it, the God of your understanding is never against you. It's always for you. However, we always have a different picture of it because, well, I didn't get what I wanted. Well, maybe because that energy knows your highest good and the experience that you should receive should be this. Maybe your expectation was down here and God's expectation for you is way up here. Ever think about that? It's always good. It's always better. You know, we tend to, as humans, think we live in a finite universe. The only thing that's finite about us is our bodies. That is the only thing that exists in our world that is finite. Everything else is infinite. And that's why I said, what does it take to be a possibilitarian? Because we are limitless. There are so many possibilities. We have a body, yes, that's finite, but we have a soul that is endless, that is infinite, that once it leaves this human container, it continues to go on. That is one of the things that we believe in science of mind, that we are never born and we never die. We are infinite. However, as humans in this human experience, we create that limitations of, well, I'm limited because of this. Well, no, sometimes we have to find, ways around it. We have available to us this beautiful thing called a creative law, which is also the creative mind, which is God, and it's our mind. So everything we think into it we create. So be careful where your thoughts go. Think of your think of your thoughts like a cookie cutter. What does your cookie cutter look like? One Christmas I decided to make gingerbread people. So I rolled out the dough. So think of that as your creative idea. And then I took this little gingerbread person and I started making gingerbread. And I was so proud of myself. All these cute little guys, running around on my pan. So I put it in the oven. And then the process happened. And when I took out the cookies, some of them were normal and some of them were a little bent. Some of them got a little fat. Some of them it was very interesting to see that each individual cookie cutter that I had put on the pan, each one came out different. But you know what? They all tasted good. And I was thinking about when I was writing this, I thought, you know what? I wonder if that's what God thinks. Here I have this beautiful cookie cutter of these beautiful, beautiful individuals, and they're all well baked, they're all perfect, but yet we tend to try to make ourselves, imperfect. Why? Why is that? Because in God's mind and our mind, we are already perfect. Sometimes we're a little overdone, but we're still good. We're still really good people. It's funny how, you think about that kind of stuff, and I thought, yeah, it's I have the cookie cutter. You have the cookie cutter. What does that look like in your life? You know, Jesus, I love the stories of Jesus because he gave us such awesome examples of mental equivalence and visioning and all the wonderful stuff that we can do to create this amazing idea of perfection, because we're all perfect. We really are. And so I was thinking about this one story in the Bible, and it's this woman, and it's found in Matthew. And so he's been around, he's been doing his thing, he's been talking, and this one woman has had, I guess you'd say, menopause from hell. And she can't help herself. She can't make herself healthy. So she goes to see him talk, and she thinks, you know what? If I just can touch his garment, I'll be okay. I'll be healed. Everything in my life will be fine again. And so she does. She participates, and he's turned around and he's doing something, and she goes, ah. And then, of course, he feels it because he can feel the energy. And he turns around and he looks at her and he's like, what is going on? And she says, I just needed to touch you so I could feel better. And he basically told her, he says, take courage, daughter. Your faith has made you well. So she was. She was instantly made well. So somewhere in her mind, she knew that without a doubt that by touching that particular garment of Jesus, that she was going to be healed. The subjective image that she created in her mind was that she would manifest her health. So what does it take for us to touch a garment or whatever it is to create that health within that we already know? What is it that we require of the outside world to make us better? And why is it outside of us? Why can't it be inside? Why can't we look within ourselves and say, you know what? I am whole, I am perfect, I'm complete, and I know I'm well. I know that everything in my body is working as it should be. Everything is working in accordance to how I was created, which is love, which is perfect. We don't need an outside source. We just need to know that right here, right now, God is right within us. Jesus healed and he performed miracles because he knew without a doubt the truth about that person. So, what about for all of us knowing the truth about ourselves in health or anything else in our lives? What is our truth? We have a truth. We say, well, they will be done. They will be done in the mind of God. Our mind is God's mind. And together we work as one. And by the way, what is the will of God? Yeah. What is the will of God? It's actually the principle of all life. It is the will that is infinite. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of Science of Mind, he says, anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power, so long as it does not harm anyone, must be the will of God for us. As much life as one can conceive will become a part of his experience. As much life as we can conceive will be our experience. Which basically is as much good as we can know about ourselves, we will have. The mental avenue must be provided through which the law may operate as a law of liberty if we are to be free. So if you want to get rid of that stinking thinking, put it out with the trash, put out that negativity, then as Dr. Holmes has often said, you have to change your thinking and change your life. And when you do that, when you accomplish that and know the truth of what is going on, your life will instantly become better. When we visualize, when we vision, when we see our mental equivalents and we see the best in our lives, that's when things shift. That's when things change. And please don't tell me that that can't exist, because it can. When you see yourself in something different, when you see yourself doing something higher or greater than you already have, you're on the path. You're already there. You're on your way. The funny thing about Science of Mind is you don't need a mediator. You don't need somebody to go through. That's the wonderful thing about metaphysics, is that we learn that we don't have to go through someone else or something else to get to God. All we have to do is go right here and just say, you know what? I know this is what's going on in my life. Don't know what to do. I don't know how to, whatever it is, but I just go right here. I don't have to go to someone else and say, this is what I don't know. However, we do have practitioners for that, which are wonderful. So if you are having some issues of trying to sort it out, our practitioners are wonderful for that. They will listen with their hearts, and they will guide you. They won't tell you. They will just guide you. So when we look at that mediator part of us, which is within ourselves, we are looking at that Christ consciousness. And that is what we all have, is a Christ consciousness. And don't be saying, well, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of Christ consciousness. Yes, you are, and you all have it. So there. So get over it. You have Christ consciousness. You are all anointed. You don't physically have to have the oil because you've already been anointed by God. Spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, works through you as you. You know the divine intelligence. And when you don't know an answer, all you have to do is ask. All you have to do is say, yeah, okay, we got this. And you will be told. You will be shown. But we're afraid to say, can you show me a hint? Because some of us don't want to know the outcome. We know the outcome. The answer, I've said before, the answer is in the prayer. What we're asking for, we already know. In fact, I've gotten into trouble a few times because I'll have someone come to me and they'll say, I don't know what to do. I'll say, yes, you do. You do. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being, I'm just knowing the God truth within you. You already know. It's just what has to happen is you need to work through the process and hear yourself say it. And sometimes that's the scariest thing when we have to listen to what we already know and blurt it out and say, okay, I admit it. This is what's going on in my life. But it's so healing when we get to that point of where we can say, okay, all right, I give, I understand. And this I accept and I know. St. Paul said when we have the mind of Christ. And we express it in two ways, by pure inspiration or intuition, or through prayer or what we call treatment. It is an action of thought. When we treat or pray for right action, we are setting into motion what we want to experience. Think about that. What you set in motion is what you want to experience. So when you are asking for something, I always recommend that you write it down, kind of like a recipe. And the reason I say that is because sometimes we leave out a few ingredients. We do. All of a sudden we'll say, oh yeah, I got it, but I wanted it to look like that. And we could kind of look at God figuratively and says, well, this is what you asked for. Well, but I really wanted it to look like that. Well, then why didn't you write it down? I can't read hieroglyphics. Yeah. So that's what happens. Is we really need to be clear. We really need to be clean. We really need to be full on in of what exactly we want, whatever it is that we want to experience to look like. And so Ernest Holmes said again, the spirit within man is God. And only to the degree that we listen to and seek to obey the spirit shall we really succeed. We must maintain a consistent, positive, aggressive mental attitude in truth. So I'm going to close with a little story about some kids. And so there was this classroom, and the teacher had given them an assignment. And many of the students came up to her and said, well, teacher, I can't do this. And then another one come up, oh, I can't do this. It's too hard. So finally, after about half the class, she looked at everybody and said, okay, done. She says, I want you all to get out a piece of paper and a pencil, and I want you to write down all the things you can't do or think you can't do. And so the class was like, oh, okay, cool. So they spent probably about 20, 30 minutes just writing down what they felt they couldn't do as individuals. So after all the students were kind of like, okay, now what do we do with this piece of paper? She says, okay, I have a box. I have a little shoe box here, and I want you all to fold it in half and fold it in half again. And when you're done, one at a time, please come up and bring your piece of paper and put it in the box. So one by one, they put it in a box, and she put the lid on it. She taped it. Then she had called the janitor in the meantime while the kids were busy, and she asked if there was a place on the playground somewhere where they could dig a hole. So the janitor had done that. And so she ceremoniously marched the children out to this area where there was a hole. And then she had one of the kids put the box in the hole. And then she had each one of them grab some dirt and put it on top of the box. And then she, of course, smoothed the dirt over, and she planted a plant on top. And so she said a little eulogy about I can't no longer exists. It is right here in this ground. It stays here. And she went on and on and on and eulogized, I can't. And at the end, she basically said, and I know that I can't is right here and is no longer needed. We love I can't, but it is no longer useful. So we release it and we let it go. Kids thought this was great. So then they marched back into the classroom. And of course, 10 minutes later, they're doing another assignment, and the first kid comes up and says, I can't. So the teacher's like, okay. So she goes to the art cabinet and makes a tombstone and says, I can't, died, and the date and the year. And she writes this and then she posts it on the bulletin board. And so then they're all like, oh, okay. So then the next child comes up and says, teacher, I can't. She goes, okay, class, I can't died. Just want you to know that you can. So from now on, this is a reminder that you can do whatever you want to do. And I know it, you know it, and we work together as a class, knowing that we can. And I know that for all of us, that we can, because we are possibilitarians. So that is our journey of possibilities, of knowing there is no limitation, knowing that we are whole, knowing that everything is possible, that we can accomplish and see whatever it is for our lives. And so let's just close our eyes for a moment. Father, Mother, God, just realizing that there is no limitation in this human inexperience, that in our minds we are free, we are unlimited, we are loved, that we are possibilitarians through and through, because God is at the center. God lets us know what is and what can be. We are constantly showed the way, and we are open to that right here, right now. We know the highest good for all that we endeavor is possible, because we do it with our co-pilot God, or whatever you want to call it. But in that love that I name as God, we are co-creators. And nothing we do is impossible. And what I know right here, right now, is that we are all creating an amazing life. I claim that. I know it. And I claim it for each and every one of us. As I release this into God's perfect law of possibilities, knowing all is well. Thank you, God. As together we say, and so it is. Amen.